The last thing I remember before the crash was her laugh. Not a scared laugh, not a nervous laugh. The kind of laugh you do when you know you're about to get away with something. We were leaving my engagement party, the kind with too many candles and too much champagne, and everyone telling me I looked like I'd finally made it. My fiancé, Daniel, had kissed my forehead in front of everyone. My parents had cried. My coworkers had lifted their glasses like my life was a movie, and the happy ending was already guaranteed. And my best friend, Sienna, kept her arm linked through mine like she owned the scene. "Come on," she said, tugging me toward the parking lot. "Let me drive. You're exhausted." I'm sober enough. She was, but I trusted her anyway because I always did. That's what she built our friendship on: trust, dependence, me believing she was the one person who would never hurt me. Then the light turned yellow. I remember saying, "Slow down." I remember her not slowing down. I remember the flash of headlights from the side street, bright, sudden, wrong. And I remember Sienna's hand tightening on the steering wheel like she was choosing the collision instead of avoiding it. When I woke up, I couldn't feel my left leg. The doctor said the word surgery like it was a minor inconvenience. My phone was gone. My ring was gone. Daniel was gone. And Sienna was sitting beside my hospital bed, mascara perfect, voice soft, telling the nurses she was family. "Don't worry," she whispered when we were alone. "I'm handling everything." That was the first time I felt real fear, not because of the pain, not because of the machines beeping, but because of the calm in her face. Because Sienna didn't look worried. She looked relieved. If you've ever had a person in your life who smiled while your world collapsed, you already know what kind of monster this story is about. And if you've ever thought, "My best friend would never do that to me," stay with me, because that's exactly what I thought, right up until the moment her accident exposed everything she'd been stealing from me for years. My name is Leela Hart. I was 28, newly promoted at a marketing firm, newly engaged, and stupidly grateful for a friendship that was quietly poisoning every good thing I touched. Sienna and I met freshman year of college, two broke girls sharing a dorm bathroom that never had hot water. I was the scholarship kid who studied with a highlighter and a panic attack. She was the charming one who could talk her way into free pizza, free extensions, free favors. She used to call me her future CEO like it was a compliment, like she was proud. What I didn't notice back then was how she always said it in front of other people, loud enough for them to laugh, like she was making sure the room understood my ambition was cute, not serious. If I got an internship, she'd say, "Of course you did. You're so responsible. I could never." Then she'd flirt with the guy running the internship program and get invited to the same office parties anyway. If I met a decent man, she'd lean in and whisper, "He seems nice, but are you sure he's not boring?" Then she'd somehow end up sitting closer to him than I was. If I talked about my goals, she'd smile, but her eyes would skim over me like she was already picturing herself standing in my place. Still, I kept her close. Because she was there when I cried after exams. Because she brought me soup when I got sick. Because she was the loudest cheerleader in my life, and I didn't understand that sometimes the loudest cheer is just a way to drown out your own instincts. After college, we moved to the same city. It felt like loyalty, like destiny. We got an apartment together. I paid more because my job paid more. She called it teamwork. She called herself your built-in support system. And whenever I hesitated, she'd remind me of everything she'd done for me, like kindness was a debt that earned her control. That's the thing about a person like Sienna. She never takes what she wants directly. She makes you hand it over, smiling, thinking you're being generous. When I started dating Daniel, Sienna insisted on being involved from day one. She wanted to see his texts. She wanted to help me pick outfits for dates. She wanted to vet him because men lie. I thought it was protective. I didn't see the pattern. She didn't want to protect me from men. She wanted to be the gatekeeper of my happiness. Daniel was the opposite of chaotic. He was steady, kind. The type who remembered my coffee order and my deadlines. The type who listened instead of performing. Sienna hated that. At first, it was subtle. She'd make a face when he said something sweet, like it was embarrassing. She'd joke that he was too perfect and that perfect men always had secrets. Then she started planting little doubts. You know he follows a lot of girls on Instagram, right? She'd say, showing me his profile like she was delivering evidence. He didn't reply for 3 hours. That's weird. Are you sure he's really ready to marry you? Men get cold feet. Every comment came wrapped in concern. Every comment ended with, I just don't want you to get hurt. And because I loved her, I let her voice become part of my inner voice. Then Daniel proposed. It happened on a Sunday morning in my kitchen. No cameras, no crowd, just him holding a ring like his hands were shaking because he cared that much. I cried so hard I laughed. I said yes before he finished asking. Sienna arrived an hour later, barged into my apartment with a bottle of champagne and screamed like she'd won too. She grabbed my hand, stared at the ring, and her smile flickered. Just once. So fast I almost convinced myself it didn't happen. Then she hugged me and said, "Oh my God, this is everything you deserve." But her voice sounded like she was reading lines. Our engagement party was her idea. She said she wanted to celebrate you properly. She offered to organize it, to handle invites, to coordinate food. I thought it was love. I didn't know I was letting the thief plan the security system. The night of the party, Sienna stayed attached to me. She managed every conversation, every photo, every toast. She made sure Daniel's coworkers met her. She made sure my boss met her. She made sure everyone saw her as my essential person. At one point, I went to the bathroom and came back to find Sienna standing close to Daniel at the edge of the patio, laughing like they shared a private joke. When I approached, she stepped back immediately and said, "Relax, Leela. I was just telling him how lucky he is." Daniel looked uncomfortable. He put his arm around me. He asked if I was okay. And Sienna watched my face like she was measuring how much she could get away with. By midnight, guests were leaving. My parents hugged me. My boss complimented me. Daniel kissed me again and said he couldn't wait to start our life. Then Sienna insisted on driving. I should have taken Daniel's keys. I should have ordered a ride. I should have listened to the tiny alarm in my chest. Instead, I climbed into the passenger seat of Sienna's car, still wearing my white dress, still floating in that fragile, temporary happiness. And 10 minutes later, the universe slammed into us. Or maybe it wasn't the universe. Maybe it was Sienna. The police report called it an accident, a failure to yield, alcohol involvement suspected but not proven. She cried. She shook. She told everyone she was sorry. She was not sorry. Because when I woke up, the first thing I learned wasn't that I'd need surgery. It was that Daniel had left the hospital, not because he didn't care, because someone told him I didn't want him there. And the person who told him was the one sitting by my bed, holding my hand, whispering, "I'm handling everything." The first time I realized Sienna had been working against me for years was when my nurse asked, "Do you want us to call your emergency contact again?" I blinked. My emergency contact is Daniel. She hesitated, the way people do when they're about to say something that will change your reality. We did call him, but the number we have on file, it doesn't match what you're saying. My throat went dry. What number is on file? She read it off. It was Sienna's number. Not only that, my emergency contact name had been changed to Sienna Rose's sister. Sister. I didn't have a sister. I stared at the ceiling tiles while pain throbbed through my leg and through the fresh cast of my life. My hands were weak. My mouth tasted like metal, but my brain was suddenly sharp in a way it hadn't been since the crash. Because you don't accidentally rewrite someone's emergency contact. You don't accidentally label yourself sister. You do that when you want authority, access, control, and Sienna had all three. When she returned from getting coffee, she breezed in like she owned the room, carrying a bouquet of cheap carnations and a smile that felt rehearsed. She kissed my forehead like a saint. "There she is," she said to the nurse. "How's my girl doing?" The nurse left and Sienna finally looked at me, really looked. It wasn't warmth in her eyes, it was assessment, like I was a situation to manage. "I had to make a few calls," she said, brushing my hair back. "Everyone was panicking. I told them you needed rest." No stress, no visitors. "Daniel," I croaked, Her mouth turned sympathetic. He was very emotional. I told him to go home. You don't need him hovering while you're like this. While you're like this, like I was damaged goods, I tried to sit up. Pain knifed through my hip and I gasped. Sienna's hand pressed lightly against my shoulder, not comforting, just controlling. Easy, she murmured. You'll hurt yourself. Let me handle it. That phrase again, let me handle it. And because I was drugged and terrified, I let her. 2 hours later, when Daniel finally came anyway, everything became clearer. He walked into the room holding my favorite hoodie and a bag of toiletries like he'd been crying in the car. His eyes were red, his jaw tight. He didn't look angry at the situation. He looked angry at me. Leela, he said, stopping at the door like he wasn't sure he was welcome. I reached for him. Daniel, please come here. He didn't move. Sienna stood smoothly, placing herself between us like a curtain. Hey, she said softly. She's been through a lot. Daniel's gaze stayed on me. Why didn't you tell me? My mouth opened. Tell you what? He exhaled hard like the words tasted bitter. That you didn't want me at the hospital, that you told them I wasn't allowed in, that you were done. My stomach turned. I never said that. Sienna's hand slid to Daniel's elbow, familiar, casual, possessive. Babe, she's confused. The meds. Daniel's head snapped toward her. Don't call me that. Sienna blinked, offended for half a second, then softened. Sorry, I've been here all night. I'm exhausted. Daniel looked back at me. Sienna showed me the texts, Leela. The room tilted. What texts? I whispered. He pulled out his phone and held it up, screen facing me. The messages were from my number. My number. They said things like, I can't do this anymore. I don't want you here. I need space. Don't contact my family. I'm humiliated. My chest tightened so fast I couldn't breathe. That's not me. Daniel's face hardened, but there was grief under it. Then who is it? I turned my head slowly toward Sienna. She didn't look panicked. She looked ready. She sighed, the most theatrical sound I'd ever heard. Leela, you told me you didn't want him to see you like this. You said you didn't want pity. You asked me to tell him. I never asked you. Sienna's eyes shined with fake hurt. Why would I lie? Because you already are, I thought, but I couldn't prove it. Not yet. Daniel stared at me like he was trying to solve a puzzle with missing pieces. If you didn't send those texts, he said, voice low, then how did she get them? Because she had my phone. The realization hit so hard my hands started shaking. My phone was gone since the crash. The EMTs must have collected it, or it flew under the seat, or... Sienna had taken it, and suddenly I remembered the split second after impact. Sienna unbuckling first. Sienna crawling out. Sienna moving around the driver's side, not toward the road, but back toward the console. At the time, I thought she was looking for her purse. She was looking for my life. Daniel took a step forward finally. Leela, he said, softer, I love you, but this is... A wave of pain cut me off, but not physical. It was humiliation. The idea that the person I loved was standing there doubting me because my best friend had curated a story for him. I forced myself to speak clearly. Daniel, listen to me. Sienna has my phone. She sent those messages. I didn't. Sienna's lips parted like she couldn't believe I'd accuse her. Then she did something smart. She cried, not messy crying, elegant crying. One tear, shaking breath. The perfect amount to look wounded but believable. Daniel, she whispered, I can leave if this is too stressful. I did everything I could to protect her. Protect, that word again, the halo she wore while she stole. Daniel rubbed his forehead. I can't deal with this right now, I need time. And then he left just like that. Sienna watched him go. When the door clicked shut, her tears vanished like they'd never existed. She turned to me with a calm smile. You see, she said, this is why I handle things. I stared at her. Where's my phone? Her eyes stayed on mine, lost in the crash. Let me see yours, I said. She laughed quietly. You're on painkillers, Leela. You're not thinking straight. Then she leaned closer, voice lowering into something almost kind. Rest, heal, and stop fighting me. I'm the only one still here. That night after she left, I asked the nurse for a hospital iPad. My hands were clumsy, but anger is a better stimulant than caffeine. I logged into my email. My password didn't work. I tried again, still locked. Then I saw the recovery email option. The recovery email had been changed 2 days ago, to Sienna's email. My heart pounded in my ears. It wasn't just Daniel. It wasn't just the phone. She'd gone into my accounts. My finances, my work, my wedding planning, my entire identity. And then the true horror slid into place. If Sienna controlled my accounts, she could control the story everyone believed. She could make me look unstable, unfaithful, grateful, ungrateful, anything. She could steal my life and leave me holding the ruins. I spent the next hour making quiet, careful moves. I asked the nurse to help me contact patient services. I asked for a list of who had been approved to access my medical information. Sienna's name was everywhere, signed on forms I hadn't seen. I asked for security footage from the check-in desk. I asked for a report of anyone who requested to retrieve my belongings. And the nurse, who had been watching Sienna all day with a frown she tried to hide, finally said something that made my blood run cold. "Honey," she whispered, leaning closer, "your friend came by yesterday asking for your ring. My engagement ring. She said you wanted it safe. She signed for it." I closed my eyes, because now I knew what this really was, not jealousy, not an accident, a takeover. And the accident was just the moment she thought she could finish the job. I did confront Sienna right away, not because I was scared of her, not because I still loved her, but because I finally understood the game she was playing, and it wasn't the kind you win by yelling in a hospital bed. People like Sienna don't survive on truth. They survive on timing. They survive on the moment when you're too weak to explain yourself and everyone else is too tired to ask questions. So I stopped reacting. I started collecting. The next morning, I asked for a social worker and had my visitor permissions changed. No more family. No more automatic access. I requested a password to be used before any staff discussed my case with anyone, including friends. I watched the nurse type it in, and I chose something Sienna would never guess, my father's middle name. Then I asked for my belongings. Not just the usual wallet keys list. I asked for an itemized report of everything retrieved from the crash scene, and I asked who signed for what. The clerk looked annoyed until I said, very calmly, "I'm concerned about identity theft." That phrase flips a switch in people. Suddenly, it isn't drama. It's procedure. By afternoon, I had 3 things in writing: the time someone signed out my engagement ring, the name on the signature line, and the badge number of the staff member who handed it over. Sienna. But paper alone doesn't change minds. Not with someone like her. She had spent years training everyone around me to see her as the reliable one and me as the lucky one who needed help. So I needed proof that didn't rely on anyone's opinion. I needed receipts. I called my office from the hospital phone and asked my assistant to forward anything weird that came in from my email over the last 2 days. My assistant hesitated, then said, "Leela, I thought you told us you were taking an indefinite leave." "I did not," I said, slow and steady. "What did you receive?" She forwarded the message to a secure address I dictated over the phone. It was a resignation email from me, sent at 2:13 a.m. the night of the crash. It thanked the company, apologized for personal instability, and requested all future correspondence be sent to, of course, Sienna's email for support. My vision blurred, not from tears, from rage so hot it made my body feel cold. Sienna didn't just want Daniel. She wanted my career, my reputation. My entire identity, wrapped up neatly so she could step into it like a dress. And then it hit me. If she could resign for me, she could marry for me too, or at least destroy the engagement until Daniel needed someone else to lean on. Someone comforting, someone nearby. Someone who already called him baby like she'd been practicing. That night, Daniel finally called me. His voice sounded broken. "Leela," he said, "I don't know what to believe." "Believe this," I replied. "Tomorrow, come to the hospital at 10 a.m. Don't talk to Sienna first." "Don't warn her, just come." He hesitated. "Why?" "Because I'm going to show you the difference between a mistake and a plan." He went quiet, then, "Okay." At 9:45 a.m., I asked the nurse for one more favor. She was older, the kind with a no-nonsense face and a soft heart, and she'd seen enough messy families to recognize a predator when one walked in smiling. I handed her a sticky note with the password I'd set for my case. "If anyone asks about me," I said, "make them give you this word. If they don't know it, don't tell them anything. And if Sienna arrives before 10, tell her I'm asleep and can't have visitors." The nurse nodded once. "Honey," she said, "I got you." At 10:02, Daniel arrived. At 10:05, Sienna arrived like she had a calendar invite to my pain. She stepped into my room holding a smoothie and a designer tote, new, glossy, expensive. She kissed my forehead, then turned to Daniel with that bright, practiced warmth. "I'm so glad you're here," she said. "I've been meaning to talk to you." Daniel didn't answer. He watched her the way you watch a magician when you know there's a trick and you're finally ready to find it. Sienna glanced at me, then back to him. "I know things have been confusing," she continued, "but we can get through it. She needs support and I'm—" "Where's Leela's ring?" Daniel asked. Sienna froze for half a heartbeat, then she laughed lightly. "What? Why are you asking that?" "Because the hospital says you signed for it." Her smile didn't drop, but her eyes sharpened. "Oh," she said, like she'd just remembered. "Yes, I did. She asked me to keep it safe." I raised my head slightly. I did not. Sienna's gaze slid to me and the air changed. The warmth became warning. "Leela," she said gently, "you were in shock. You don't remember everything." Daniel's jaw clenched. "Do you have it?" Sienna's fingers tightened around her tote handle. "Of course, it's at my place. I didn't want it to get lost." "And your email address," I added, voice even. "Why is it listed as my recovery email?" Sienna blinked. "Because I helped you set things up years ago. You're not thinking clearly." I nodded slowly. "Then you won't mind if we check the timestamp." I gestured to the table. On it was the printed resignation email my assistant forwarded, plus the hospital belongings sign-out sheet with Sienna's signature, plus screenshots of my email recovery changes, because patient services had helped me regain access and generate an account activity log. Sienna stared at the papers, then laughed again, too loud, too fast. "This is insane." Daniel picked up the resignation email, reading. His face changed as he scanned it. "You wrote this," he said to me, voice shaking. "No," I replied. "She did, from my phone." Sienna stepped forward sharply. "You don't know that." And that was the moment she made her mistake. Because if she had stayed calm, this could have been messy, debatable, a he said, she said. But Sienna couldn't stand the idea of losing control in front of Daniel. So she tried to take it back the only way she knew, by turning me into the problem. "She's been jealous of me for years," Sienna snapped. "She can't stand that people like me. She can't stand—" Daniel looked up from the paper. "Stop." Sienna fell silent, stunned. He turned to me. "Show me your phone records." "I don't have my phone," I said. "It went missing." But the hospital security officer reviewed footage from the check-in desk. "There's a clip of you asking for my belongings." Sienna's face drained slightly. "You can't," she said, voice smaller now. "That's private." "It's not private when you stole it," the nurse said from the doorway. And then the security officer stepped in behind her. Sienna turned, eyes wide for the first time since the crash. "What is this?" The officer spoke calmly. "Ma'am, we need to ask you a few questions about property retrieval and unauthorized access to patient information." Sienna looked back at me and the mask slipped. There it was, the real her, not the best friend, not the sister, not the caretaker. A person who believed she was entitled to the life I built because she'd been close enough to watch it. "You did this on purpose," she hissed. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't insult her. I didn't give her the satisfaction of an emotional explosion she could label unstable. I just said, "No, you did. I'm just refusing to disappear inside it." Daniel's hands were shaking as he set the papers down. "Sienna," he said, voice cracked, were you ever going to tell me?" Sienna swallowed. Her eyes darted, calculating. Then, like a cornered animal, she tried one last move. She lunged for my bag on the table, where the printed logs were, and knocked it to the floor. Papers scattered, but the security officer caught her arm. And in that messy second, when her tote tipped open, something slid out and clinked against the tile. A small velvet ring box. Daniel stared at it like his heart just fell onto the floor with it. Sienna froze. The room went silent. I watched Daniel bend down, pick it up, open it. My ring glittered inside, innocent and cruel. Daniel's breath hitched. "You had it." Sienna's eyes filled with tears again, but this time they weren't elegant. They were furious. "I was keeping it safe," she whispered. "For who?" Daniel asked. "For you." She didn't answer. She didn't have to. Everything she'd been hiding was suddenly visible, not because I screamed it, but because her own accident had forced her too close to my life, and she got greedy. Sienna was escorted out of the room. Afterward, Daniel sat beside my bed and held my hand like he was afraid I'd vanish. "I'm sorry," he said. "You shouldn't be," I replied. "You were targeted too." Because that was the part people misunderstand about betrayal like this. It isn't a crime of passion. It's a crime of patience. Sienna didn't ruin my life in one night. She had been loosening the screws for years. The crash just gave her the perfect excuse to rip the door off. The fallout was slow, but final. My company reinstated me after I provided the access logs and filed a formal report. Daniel and I postponed the wedding, not because love was gone, but because trust needs time to heal when someone tries to replace you in your own story. Sienna tried to spin it online, of course. Vague posts about being punished for caring too much, about toxic friends who can't stand seeing you shine. But when the hospital filed its own incident report and my attorney sent her a cease and desist, the performance stopped. She vanished the way cowards do, quietly after the spotlight burns too hot. Months later, when I could finally walk without a cane, I went back to the intersection where it happened, not to relive it, to reclaim it. I stood there with the wind cutting through my coat and realized something that surprised me. The accident didn't expose Sienna. Sienna exposed Sienna. All I did was stop covering for her. And if you're watching this because you've got a Sienna in your life, someone who smiles while they sabotage you, here's the hardest truth and the most freeing one. You don't have to prove they're evil to leave. You only have to notice that you're shrinking. Because the moment you stop handing them pieces of your life, they reveal exactly who they are.